Well, we may have a very meager cast reunion if people can't figure out time zones here, because Rod said that he was really looking forward to it. Neil said he would absolutely be here. John Raymond said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about that film." Bruce is filming in Atlanta. Paul is filming, but said he might be able to join. And like I said, Shirley, Zoe, and Michelle and Will are all currently filming in Europe, but sent their best regards. And also, we talked to Kelly Reichert, who is currently editing her next film, and respectfully declined, but wanted to send her best regards regarding this film. So it may be a very focused Q&A here with just you on here, but thank you so much for being here. I'm glad that one person checked their calendar. Yes, thank you. So Tommy Nelson here played Jimmy White, one of your very younger roles when you were just kind of getting started in the industry, right? And then
there was 2000. I believe we filmed it in 2010.
Yeah, 2010, then released in 11.
Yeah, so I was about 12 years old. It was one of my earlier films. Now that I'm 23. I remember it pretty well. I hope, as well as any of the people that may have potentially been here, that you could have gotten. But hopefully my memory will serve me, even though I was a lot younger back then.
Well, thank you very much. Otherwise, I'd just be talking to myself for a while here. We do have audience mics if people want to ask questions. That I would be staying on stage pointing them out right now, but the cord for this mic won't reach to the stage. Check. Okay. Check. Tommy, can you hear this one?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, great. Okay. Then let me go up on stage. Okay, thank you, Tommy, and virtually welcome to Klamath Falls, Oregon, which we are a bit west of where you shot this film. You filmed out in Burns, but...
yeah, like an hour outside of Burns.
Yeah, so those of us who are local know all too well. You go east of us and east of Lakeview and Burns, and there's not a whole lot out there. It's a pretty open country. So Tommy, I know that you've been on a bunch of television shows and a bunch of films. Hit one. What one and cut? Hang on. Sorry. Tommy, why don't you tell us kind of about some of the things that you've been working on since Meek's Cutoff was filmed?
Well, after Meek's, I guess I was going into 7th grade when I did that. So after that, the next thing, a big thing I did was a Wes Anderson film in Moonrise Kingdom.
Fantastic film.
Yeah, very fun movie. And then, you kind of hit that dead spot when you're, between 15 and 18, when you're an actor that age, because they, these productions can hire somebody who's 18 who looks 16 to play 16. They don't have to deal with, going through with tutors and with the shorter hours and whatnot. Then I went out to college in New York and did a couple other films after that. My Friend Dahmer, recently The Cat in the Moon with my good friend Alex Wolf, who I met on My Friend Dahmer, and a couple other TV shows that are called Saul, Gotham, FBI, and then upcoming I just shot a few episodes of The Righteous Gemstones, which is Danny McBride's show on HBO about the televangelist family. So I think that should be released in maybe sometime next year. So that's what I've been working on since.
Fantastic. And was it you or Neil? Have you been doing some stuff on Broadway? I can't remember if that was you or Neil that's been doing that.
It was probably Neil.
Neil? Okay.
Actually, Neil also was in Moonrise Kingdom as well.
Yeah, there's actually been some overlap with a few characters. Paul Dano has been in a couple of films with a couple other cast members from this. Roderick Rindeau's been in a couple of films. And I wish they could be here to talk about that experience. I especially really wanted to talk to Bruce Greenwood, who our audience probably didn't recognize him behind all that hair playing Stephen Meek, the giant beard and the massive amount of hair. But if he was shaved, you go, oh, it's that guy from that thing and that thing and that thing.
Hundreds of things.
Star Trek and 13 Days and so many films.
Quite a bit of makeup every day on this.
Well, I'll tell you, and I know this was shot when you were still a kid, so you may not totally remember, but that's why we wanted to do this 10th anniversary thing. Our film festival is the only film festival around that only exclusively shows made in Oregon films. And so we wanted to show this film because, first of all, it's a fantastic film. Second of all, it's made by a director, Kelly Reichert, who couldn't join us tonight but wanted to, who has gained a lot of notoriety. Third, the cast is filled with actors like yourself, Tommy, that maybe people don't immediately recognize the name if we said Tommy Nelson, but we see the face like, oh, you're that guy who was on Boardwalk Empire, and you were on Better Call Saul, and you were, how many times do you get told, aren't you that guy who is in that thing?
I actually, just before this, I work at a restaurant in Connecticut, and somebody recognized me there and from Better Call Saul and asked to take a picture. And I thought, which never, honestly doesn't happen that often, but it's funny you should ask tonight because it did happen tonight. Right before this.
Well, I'll tell you, and we'll take some questions from the audience as well. But Meek's Cutoff. What I love about this film, there's been so many westerns made throughout the history of Hollywood, and in most of them, not all, but certainly most, the portrayal of Native American characters have largely been a caricature or a parody, and then it's glorified. The wagons going west, it's supposed to be some big, grand, exciting adventure. This film captures atmosphere like few others around. It doesn't have like the huge, grand, fights and circle the wagons and all of those cliches of Hollywood. What it has is the feeling of hot, sweaty, dirty, tired, exhausted, having to hike halfway across the country, just barely scraping by and finding any means necessary, which is true. It's a story that's fictionalized, but based very much so on historic reality. A lot of wagon trains decided, by any means necessary, let's try to figure out to shorten the trip. That's how we got things like the Donner Party. So this film, when I watch, and I hope that our audience feels the same, you feel the atmosphere of it. You feel the vastness, the utter exhaustion, the dirt and grime and sweat of how difficult it is to walk halfway across the country in a wagon train. Was making the film that same kind of experience, because the actors' portrayals seem like you are just miserable. and I say that lovingly, like the experience of, and we know what Southeastern Oregon is like. It gets very hot. It gets very muggy. There's not a lot around. How true was your experience of making the film to that, what was being portrayed on screen?
Well, obviously I wouldn't say it was quite as bad as what the covered wagon settlers had to go through probably in the 19th century. But I will say that I think that what was really unique about shooting the movie, even though as young as I was, I kind of recognized this. It was the first time that I really felt like the environment around me really affected my performance in the way that it was meant to. I mean, so the first, of course, everyone watching this there probably knows this. I didn't know this when I flew out when I was like 11 or whatever. The first month and a half shooting, it was just sweltering hot, like brutal. I remember my lips got really, you might be able to see it in the movie in a couple scenes, my lips got like so chapped my first week there. It was the first week of filming, and it was just brutal. Like, I had to put on this aquaphor all the time, but at the same time, I was like, oh, should we keep it because it's more accurate? His lips probably would be that chapped. And then, like, halfway through the shoot, it just got freezing. Because we shot in, like, from September. We started in the beginning of September, late August maybe, and then that halfway mark was probably in October, and we wrapped sometime in November. So the elements, you know, like literally the weather and everything, became a huge part of the movie. And it was really freezing or really sweltering in a lot of those scenes you see. But it really, you know, looking back on it, I still haven't made a movie or anything since then where those elements felt so real. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't create something like that on a set, on a backlot. Like that was just what it was. That's what we were going through. It really was that desert and those conditions.
You can't just go to the trailer and cool off like most film sets. You're way out in the middle of the high desert in Oregon, and there's not a whole lot around.
Yeah, I mean, we would probably drive an hour and a half out every day from the hotel. The hotel was right. It's a place called the Horseshoe Inn. It was like right outside of Burns, like, you know, like maybe a couple miles. It was like on that same road. I remember it. But I remember we would go like up this hill in the past stands every morning at like 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m., and drive for like an hour and a half, 2 hours to just the middle of nowhere, really, and shoot our scenes.
Oh, well, it comes across on film because what watching it makes me, you know, and I was hoping that John Raymond, the screenwriter, could be here so he could explain himself of why he wanted to traumatize audiences so badly. But because and this is true with a lot of Kelly's films where she really tries to capture atmosphere in a really, really unique way. It's very, very much so her trademark. Mark, did you have a question over here? No. Eric, is that mic on?
Check. Hello, check. A little bit. There you go. Hey, thanks for showing up tonight. We really appreciate it and being part of the festival. I got maybe a couple of questions. One is, yeah, it looks like you're suffering, and having been out there, you don't have much choice but to suffer when it's windy and it's hot and it's cold and it's dusty, and it just looked brutal and that you were suffering. So, given the age that you are at, that what in this experience said, "Hey, I want to do more of this. This is a profession I want to pursue." I mean, I can imagine
did you get PTSD from making this
film? No
film?
more of this. And then also, like, what did you learn? What lesson did you take from this sort of hardcore experience forward in the rest of your work and your profession?
Thank you. That's such a good question. I mean, I think if anything, I learned like how, you know, although brutal, sort of conducive to a good performance, like an accurate environment around you that's accurate to what is actually going on in the script and what's supposed to be happening in the scenes can be. Because I always said, like, whenever people ask me about this movie, I always kind of tell them, like, I didn't really feel like I needed to act very much. You know, a lot of actors talk about, like, you know, having to get there, or you always hear that phrase, like, how do you get there? How do you get in that moment? In this, I mean, what do you mean get there? Like, I'm already here. I'm already in the middle of the desert, like, you know, either freezing or just like sweating so much with these busted up lips or whatever. You know, so I guess it made me wish I could make more movies like that. And to an extent, I think I have. I think it's a lot easier in film than it is in television to make something real and incorporate like the elements around you. If that makes any sense. You know, I know it's kind of a broad way to say it, but it was an unforgettable experience. Like I still remember so much from making that movie, and that's probably when I really started to remember really started to sort of like take in the experiences I was having on film sets, because I was very young, but it was also a turning point in my life, I think.
It sounds like, and maybe this is Kelly Reichardt's approach of her films are so atmospheric that she wants to put people in that experience so that you don't necessarily have to act and be in the fantasy of it. All the cast and crew are just trying to survive the experience.
Yeah. No, that is kind of what it felt like. And, we also, but at the same time, like, as laborious as it was, I mean, this was shot on, I could be wrong, but I think this was shot on 16. So I think that, we didn't have, like, a lot of time to waste with doing things over and over. I think that we only had a couple, like, trying to do a 3-to-1 ratio for a shot in terms of takes to a shot, because we just, it was a small budget and we're shooting on film, and this is 2009, 10 that we shot it, and it came out in 2011, I think.
Yeah.
So this is still when film was being phased out of, like, the independent scene, but we were still doing it. And, like, the shot, the shot of the wagon when it goes down the hill and like cocoons into itself and collapses. That was a really stressful day because we knew we only had one take. Only one camera. So it was like, let's hope that this thing falls the right way and that the camera gets it. Otherwise, what the hell are we gonna do?
Tommy, we have another question from the audience over here.
Yeah, I sort of have two things. So I'm wondering if anybody counted steps or miles that you took? Because I know taking multiple shots, that you sort of go over the same areas, if anybody counted that, as well as, was it hard filming with such minimal dialogue? And, like, was it, like, in between breaks that, like, you were just, like, talking a lot, trying to get all the words out, and then actually when you're, being filmed, then it was pretty quiet?
This is another really good question. I wish someone had counted steps. I'm sure someone did. Like, that seems like something someone would do in a film set, be like, oh, you guys walked. It's like rapping or something. They're like, oh, you walked this many steps or miles or whatever. But I don't know, but it was a lot. I'll tell you that much. I never felt like, there's so much downtime on film sets that filming without a lot of dialogue never felt like that bizarre or whatever. Like, everyone's always kind of talking in between setups and whatnot. And I think it was actually important too, because, like, when you're trying to develop bonds between people but also characters, or as your characters, the best way to do that in film with such little dialogue would be to do it in between takes, you know what I mean? Because the scenes where there's a lot of dialogue are so few and far between, like you mentioned, that in order to develop those relationships, it's important to have them off camera. But no, I mean, a lot of those shots that you see that are, without dialogue and whatnot, a lot of them are pretty, long static shots or, establishing shots. And then, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Michelle's character fires with the gun. I remember doing that a couple times. But that was kind of challenging to, like, stay still that whole time and anticipate the firing of the gun, because, I don't like loud noises. And it took her so long to load that thing, because it was like a real period rifle. And we did that a couple times. That was kind of challenging, stuff like that.
Well, it must have been interesting being so young, a part of a cast that was so experienced, being surrounded by so many actors who, there's a term in Hollywood of working actors. And this cast is comprised of people who, the reason why they're probably not joining us tonight like they said they would is because they're probably on set right now, or they're preparing for tomorrow's film shoot, because these are actors who are constantly working. You look him up on IMDb, Bruce Greenwood has been in over 150 films. Michelle Williams has been nominated for the Academy Award 4 times. Paul Dano, one of those faces that immediately people should recognize from films like There Will Be Blood or Cowboys and Aliens and Little Miss Sunshine, The Good Heart, so many great films. At the time, since you were so young, did you realize like the quality of talent that you were surrounded by on set the entire time?
Yeah, I did. I did definitely, and I'm very grateful for it now that I got to experience it at such a young age. Because a lot of those people became my favorite actors like later in life. But like like I knew Shirley like from Harry Potter at that point. Like she's moaning Myrtle in Harry Potter. I remember like seeing her at the airport. Like 'cause we had to take a plane into Oregon and then take another plane into Bend maybe or something. From Portland, I don't really remember. But I was like, I think that's moaning Myrtle. I think she's playing my mom. Like to my mom. And like kind of like, I think I freaked her out a little bit because I kept staring at her. But I knew Paul from Little Miss Sunshine. I knew Will from like Remember the Titans. I mean, I knew that they were like huge heavyweights, you know? But the advantage of being a kid when you're meeting these people is that you're not as starstruck and you're not as like self-apprehensive when talking to them. Like you can kind of just be yourself because you know how kids are. Like,
What was it intimidating?
no, not really. If I had made that movie when I was 17, I would have been terrified.
We have a question. We have a question over here, Bowen.
So hello, wonderful film. I was really struck by the ending and just kind of how the rest of the film set it up. What were your feelings on the ending, or just the overall mood of the film? Because I noticed that just throughout, it almost felt like there was just tension being slowly wrenched upwards and upwards. Except it ended with all of the loose ends untied, and I thought that was surprising and interesting.
Thank you. The ending, I can't believe, first of all, that we found that tree. Like, that tree that we found at the end, it was like the perfect description. It was exactly like the description of what it was in the script. You know, it's like half dead, half alive. It was incredible. I think that the ending is interesting. It's ambiguous, but it's hopeful. And the film really, I think, comes together. There's a couple of things that like make the atmosphere of the film that you described so tense and so convincing, and that make it work so well. I think part of it is the music. I think the music in this film, the score is like really good and really sells it. And it doesn't overshadow like the scenes where there isn't any music in the background or whatever. I think it's just very well balanced there, the editing of the film as well. And like I said before, just the fact that we all were really tense at that point from being like spending 2.5, 3 months in the desert. Something that I don't think anyone except maybe Rod, because I think he's from Oregon, was used to, like that climate. I love the ending. I think it's kind of hauntingly beautiful, but it's also, it just depends on how you look at it, I guess. I hope that they do find water, but you never know.
Well, Rod was really excited to be here. I don't know what's holding him up, but Rod Rindeau, who played the Native American, is also a stuntman as well as an actor. He's been in a ton of films. Wild Wild West, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Cowboys and Aliens, Postman, just as a few examples of films that he's been in. But I'm going to have to put you on the spot to speak on behalf of Rod. But being a Native American actor as Rod is, I found this film fascinating from the standpoint that 90 to 95% of Western films that have been made throughout Hollywood history really never took the time to develop Native American characters. They were essentially the MacGuffin and usually portrayed as the bad guys. We've seen, the army comes to, cavalry comes to the rescue, or they circle the wagons to fight off the attack. And it really wasn't until something like Dances with Wolves came out where people kind of stopped and realized, wait, we can actually make a film that really truly develops Native American characters. And looking back on this now, 10 years later, I know you can't, it's tough to speak for someone else, but I would love to get your perspective on this, of having worked on the film and with Rod, of having a Native American actor getting the rare opportunity for a film that doesn't portray the Native American character as a parody or as a caricature, but is trying to be authentic, and how important, maybe if you can think back, or you have any memories of Rod's motivations to wanting to do a film where he could authentically portray a Native American as opposed to just being the guy who gets shot by the cavalry.
Of course, I can't speak for him, but I think one of the things that Rod really appreciated was that the reason that we reached out to him, or that the production reached out to him when we were looking for an actor to play this role, is he's one of the only, I believe, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think this is true, one of the only Native American actors that speaks the language that it's supposed to be in the film, which is Kayu, I believe is how you say it. Not many Native Americans speak that language. It's not common. It's very rare now, for obvious reasons. I think that the movie is interesting in that, it is shot from the perspective of the settlers and, the Americans and not Native Americans, obviously, but also from the perspective of the women. Like, if you watch, there's a lot of shots from the perspective of, like, the three women and then me watching them interrogate them. And there's a helplessness in that cinematography, because you're watching these three white men kind of beat up on this Native American guy. But there's nothing you can do about it. That's why the shot was so far removed, or at least that's how I saw it. And so I think that the perspective was important, and I think that, that's what draws people to this film. That's what makes it a different Western. It's from a different perspective. It's kind of like watching other movies about the same thing, but with the camera lens somewhere else, and maybe from a more marginalized perspective.
Is that something that is a highlight and proud point of your career? Because you can kind of count on one or two hands how many films are out there that really authentically portray, from a historic standpoint, Native American culture before the West was won, as it's been said. And you play a part in a film that really demonstrates something that's very, very authentic.
It absolutely is. I mean, it's a very iconoclastic Western. It's not traditional at all, at least in the sense of American culture or the culture of the United States. I am very proud of that. And it's one of the, to be in a movie like that with those themes, I mean, I can't take credit for any of it. I can't say that it's because I was choosing it. Like, I was 11. I'm not going to sit here and be like, at the time, I really thought that it was a very, very different kind of movie from a different perspective. But, looking back, and I think that, if anything, I can say that being in a movie like that helped me, sort of influenced me in who I became later. So I'm grateful for it in that sense, for sure.
Fantastic. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Anyone? And I know I keep harping on it, but we had 100% confirmations. Yes, I will be there. I can't wait to be a part of it. Messages from Neil and Rod and John and others. So I apologize that the reunion is a little bare, but thank you, Tommy, for holding court with us and reminiscing on this film. Do you have any like favorite memories from this production, or anything in particular that really stands out? It feels like it was, the portrayal to it gives the audience a vibe of hopelessness and despair and whatnot. So we talked a little bit about how true to life that was in the process of. But every film set has lighter moments, has goofs, has pranks. Especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you got nothing else to do. Anything kind of stand out? I know it's 10 years later, but anything stand out from the production that you still kind of makes you laugh or still makes you proud or that you can chuckle about now?
I mean, honestly, so many things, but I do have a lot of very specific memories from that time, and it's a time in my life I'll never forget. I mean, a lot of what I've done before and what I've done since, I don't think I've ever spent that much time in one place for one thing since then or before. I shot a movie. My first movie was a movie called The Good Shepherd, and it was a movie by the CIA that Robert De Niro directed. And it had a long shoot. It was like a year and a half. But it was so sporadic, and there were so many different locations, like in any other regular movie, that maybe I shot for 2 months or something, but it was like a week here, a week there, 2 weeks here. This is the first time I was just on location. The first and only time that I was on location in the middle of nowhere, really. I mean, not just Oregon, but hours into the desert, for like 3 months. And there's a camaraderie that you forge with people, even if you're 11. You're all still battling the same things, the same exhaustion. There's dust all over you the entire time. I mean, they would dirty our clothes up and stuff. It wasn't just like, they would really put dirt all over our clothes because we had to look like we've been doing this for such a long time. And, I just cherish the memories I have. I have individual memories with each and every one of the cast members, and I'm upset that they couldn't be here tonight, of course, but, I'll always have those. And it was a wonderful experience. Definitely something I would never, ever I'm just so glad that I was able to do, especially at a young age, honestly.
You mentioned costumes, and I'm curious about makeup. I was hoping Bruce Greenwood could join us because the dude's wearing about 20 pounds worth of hair.
I get there like earlier than us.
Well,
Probably every day.
and I know that makeup sometimes on a film set can take hours, but when you're out in the desert and it's looking like it's like 90 degrees and muggy, and then he's got like all that giant beard and hair going on top of that, he must have just been in misery throughout much of that film.
You actually just unlocked a memory that I had. I forgot about this. It would be like falling off. It's just like all the time, you know what I mean? Like I remember they were constantly touching it up because, it's hot. What are you gonna do? You can't do anything about that. He had a lot of makeup on. He's unrecognizable in the movie. And they did a great job. It was a lot though. And he would speak as Mr. Meek as soon as he had a beard on. It was Mr. Meek the whole time.
Right.
I know it's supposed to be, yeah, it is Mr. Meek.
Consummate professional, but inside, I'm sure he's saying, do I really have to have this big of a beard and this much of a wig when it's 90 degrees out and muggy and dirty and brutal?
Reading the script, I know it said he was a mountain man. I never imagined it like that. So the first day I saw it, I was like, oh my God. I was like, who's that?
Well, do we have any final questions? Otherwise, we will call it a night. And Tommy, again, thank you so much for joining us. I wish that some of our other actors and the screenwriter and director could have joined us. I'll get an email tomorrow saying, "Oh, sorry, I fell asleep," or I forgot, or is that tomorrow? Or
I hope that I did a good job, and I hope that I was able to shed some light on making the film.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very, very much, Tommy. So what's next for you? Do you have any projects in the works?
I just did a short film with a couple of my friends called Sour Honey, and The Righteous Gemstones with Danny McBride. That'll be airing, like I said, hopefully, I think sometime next year. It's on HBO, so you can look forward to that. And, it's a different world now with COVID and everything. Hopefully, we can get back to some sort of semi-normal, and the film industry can go full speed ahead again.
Well, Tommy, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's very late out on the East Coast. Thank you for making this extraordinary film for being a part of it. And we're glad that we were able to celebrate the 10th anniversary of its release and bring more exposure to what I feel is a criminally underappreciated and unknown film. Because as much as Michelle and Bruce and Paul and Will get all this, immediate recognition, and Kelly Reichardt is all this hype, this is a film that isn't really very well known. For all of the stars that are in this film, this is kind of like a forgotten movie, right?
Yeah. No, I remember when my best friend I met in college, Garrett Stivers. The moment that we became best friends was when, so my first week at Pace University, we were having a drink at the South Street Seaport. And he asked me if I had done anything before college, and I mentioned this movie kind of offhand, and he was like, "That's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen," and we've been friends ever since. So that's when I knew he was a guy that I wanted to be friends with, and he knew about this movie.
Well, and I think the reason why is anyone who watches this film has PTSD afterwards. From this is a film you experience. You're like, oh god.
I really I was older, to be completely honest with you. I think the last time I watched it was a couple months ago, and I was like, this is brutal. It really is very scary. It's very scary, you know what I mean? When I was a kid, but now.
Well, Tommy, again, thank you so much for joining us. Go get some sleep. I'm sure I'll find out tomorrow. I'll get some sorry emails from everyone who intended to be here and was not. And thank you, everyone, for hanging with us. We will start again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. with a film called Love in Dangerous Times. We will continue with our feature films all day Saturday from 10:30 to 8. Sunday is our shorts from 10:30 to 6, and then we'll end with our awards. Don't forget, your lanyard gets you free breakfast tomorrow at the Daily Bagel, and also gets you discounted breakfast at the Klamath Grill, and there's some other discounts listed. For now, I'm heading over to the Basin Martini Bar with a 10% off coupon that is in everyone's gift bag if anyone would like to join me for drinks afterwards. And thank you again so much for being a part of the 9th Annual Klamath Independent Film Festival. And thank you, Tommy.